Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 340 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is you always have a choice. Our quote of the day comes to us from Deepak Chopra. No matter what the situation, remind yourself, I have a choice. If you have yet to grab yourself a copy of The Positivity Tribe, please head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or thepositivitytribe.com and help us spread some positivity, one person and one book at a time. I'm excited for today's episode. Over the past 4.5 months, I've gotten the opportunity to become good friends with Bobby Pollicino, and I know you will enjoy hearing from him. Bobby hits on some really interesting and important ideas. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Bobby, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you, Chris. I'm excited to be here with you today.
I appreciate it. First question we ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
That's certainly a goal every day as an educator and something that I strive to do each morning that I wake up.
I love it. And first question, as you know, is the no quit question. And I'm curious if you yourself have either a no quit story or perhaps a personally or professionally challenging time where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Sure. I'll be honest, it's a story that I have not shared all that widely over the time. But, my senior year of college, I had visions, I think like every student athlete does, right, of whether it's your senior year of high school or your senior year of college, of just how the season's going to go. Our team had come off a national championship. Our head coach left to take a job at Johns Hopkins University, and we had a new coach. And I didn't really know how things were going to go. And they didn't go as planned for sure. I broke my wrist in the fall season. I had to go through a lot of rehab coming into the spring and had to sort of fight my way back on. And things just weren't going the way I had hoped. And I really had to think about whether or not I wanted to finish out that senior year. Had a conversation with one of our assistant coaches who I'm forever grateful for about sort of what it means to walk away from a team and how I would feel about that. And it got me to thinking about sort of whether or not I wanted to be the victim and point the finger and blame others, or if I wanted to take action. And so right around that time, I started getting up earlier and going to work out every morning, making better choices about how I was using my time. And one morning I was actually grabbing my sheet from just outside the coach's office, our workout regimen. And he heard me and opened up the door and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to work out." He said, "All right, you're starting tomorrow." And, that message there was that you need to make choices. You need to make choices that are going to help you. Now, senior year didn't finish out the way I'd hoped personally or from a team standpoint. I didn't start every game thereafter. But the lesson was you have a choice. You can either point the finger, you can blame others, and you can play the victim, or you can take action. And if you choose to take action, something's going to happen. We don't know exactly what will, but we know something's going to happen. In this case, it worked out for me in the short term and certainly in the long term as well, because I know that would have been a decision that stayed with me for the rest of my life. And so I'm happy I made the right choice.
I appreciate you sharing a story, and I think it's an interesting story of being a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old in college, thinking about whether it's a sports team, whether it's a committee, whether it's something you're involved. And a lot of times we don't look at that and we can't think about it 5, 10, 15 years down the road. But I think it's important to have those people in your corner. And obviously you and your assistant coach had a very candid conversation, but it's one of those that 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, as I know you personally, I know that you're proud of the decision you made. And I think that's the valuable perspective of life, is really the people that are in our corner. And sometimes you need those people to say, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but let me just give you my 2 cents because I'm coming from a different, usually a place of maturity. So I appreciate
Right.
you expanding on that. If you don't mind, just tell our listeners quickly a little bit about who you are and what you do today.
Sure. Grew up in upstate New York. I have an older brother who also played lacrosse in college and is a high school coach and educator. We blue collar family growing up there. Had a father who served in Vietnam with the United States Marine Corps, and then just went straight to work after the war. Mother went straight to work and sort of instilled values in my brother and me about what it means to work hard and to do your job and do it to the best of your ability. That certainly led to some success that I had in high school and college as a student athlete. Um, I followed my brother's path, went into education. I've been working in school since 1999, the fall after I graduated from college. And I've been very fortunate to be at the Bullis School since 2003 in Potomac, Maryland. I've served as a teacher, soccer coach, lacrosse coach, and I'm currently the head of the upper school here.
I'm glad you shared the backstory with our listeners because some guests just go into like the last 2 seconds of where they're right now, and I think it's always a good place to kind of understand where people come from. Interesting question we ask each guest, and I'm curious to get your answer. Is if you had to define yourself, but you could only pick one word, what word would you pick?
Confident. I would use that word because that's something, again, that was instilled in me by my father. That you need to believe in yourself and believe in your strengths, and recognize that when you have areas that maybe aren't strengths, you need to build on those and you need to get better. And so that's something that's sort of always been with me.
I think that is so true, and I like that word confident. I think it's often overlooked as cockiness or arrogance, but it's confident. I think as you are confident in life and different things, I think it just projects that you've put in time and effort to become the best version of yourself. And speaking of that, these last 15 plus months have been not only challenging for everybody, but I think ultra challenging for people in and out of education. And maybe an interesting question, but what's been the biggest challenge as the head of an upper school for the last 15 months?
That's an excellent question. And I would say it's been me needing to step back and recognize that everybody really is experiencing this pandemic in their own unique way. And recognizing that I've been very fortunate in what my experience has been, how it has not impacted my family in the same way it's impacted others, and that my approach and my optimism to work through it can't just be put on other people. Needing to make sure that there's time for others to share their experiences and to listen to what those experiences have been and to provide the support that they need in that moment. And sometimes that's just listening. Um, Other times it is sharing your own personal experiences, but really being able to step back and appreciate how each individual, whether it's been a student, a faculty member, a parent, has gone through this 15-month pandemic.
I had the opportunity to work with you and your school a couple of weeks back, and I really enjoyed that experience. And the reason I wanted to touch on that is because something that you just said is, I think, so important. Is sometimes it's just listening, and for me, as you know, one of the things I talk about is the communication perspective of sometimes people just need to be heard. They don't want you to say, you're right, I was wrong, you're better than me. It's sometimes, and it's that word of empathy, which I think people miss a lot, is they think it's you have to put yourself in that person's position and say, okay, I'm changing my opinion, and you're right and I'm wrong, and you're better than me or smarter than me. But it's going to the concept of just listening and just allowing that person, giving him or her a platform. And sometimes it might be 2 or 3 minutes, sometimes it could be more than that, but it's just the idea of sometimes people just need to be heard. And I think in today's day and age, that's so often overlooked.
Agreed.
you know Interesting as I've gotten the chance to know you over the last couple months, how have you stayed positive during these challenging times? And as a leader, both in the school as well as your family, and we all lead each other ourselves, but how have you stayed positive? What are the things that you've done to maintain that positive perspective during these very challenging months?
One has been to maintain routine, which is something that really I started probably 3 or 4 years ago. For a number of years as a coach and as a parent, I wasn't doing much in terms of working out, exercise, and really taking care of myself. And that all changed. And part of that, being an educator is summer is a time where you can really sort of slow down and you're not rushing moment to moment. So I would even then change my time I get up in the morning. And about 2 years ago, I realized, you know what, I'm just going to stick with the routine. And so if I get up at 4:30 during the school year, why not get up at 4:30 in the summer and continue to have the same approach, but then use that added time that I have when I'm not getting 3 kids ready for school and getting them out the door to continue to grow as a person, as a leader, as an individual, as a parent, as a spouse. And keeping up that routine through the pandemic. So if I go back to March 13th, which was the last day we were in school in 2020, I never wavered from that. And so I continued that through the spring school year into the summer and again into this year. And by having that routine, I stayed on a path. And that included making sure I was reading, making sure I was practicing meditation and other areas. Even still trying to train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu online, which is safer, I guess, in some ways, literally with the pandemic, but also physically. And just staying with that and recognizing that, there are choices we have every single day, and we're all experiencing life differently. And if we can just focus on the positives and look for areas to build and grow, then we're going to find more positives too, right? You get what you give, and you find what you look for. And the more we look for the positives in life, the more we'll find. And lastly, I would say maintaining that gratitude journal that I started 4 or 5 years ago, and really looking at the experiences in my life that I've been blessed to have, and taking the time to recognize those.
We're going to obviously talk about books in a second, and this is released just via audio, but we record over video, and right over Bobby's shoulders are his bookshelf. And I've had the opportunity of being in his office, and candidly speaking, that was the first thing that I was looking at when I got there. But going back to what you said, and you and I have had a couple of conversations on this, and it was actually, I believe, the first Zoom conversation we had. You specifically spoke about how gratitude has changed your life, and I wanted to just maybe put you on the spot for a second. But what got you into it? And I think the idea and concept that I always have a challenge with people is when I talk about gratitude, they think it's this huge thing you need to do, 30 minutes here and 40 minutes there. And some of the most successful people that I've been able to talk to, they literally have sometimes the most simplistic part of gratitude or part of their morning or evening routine, but it's the consistency. So if you wouldn't mind just expanding on that a minute, because I think it is really fascinating how you shared with me a few months back.
Sure. I had the good fortune to work with an organization called Leadership and Design, who does a lot of work with educators. And part of what they talk about as educators is the maintenance that you need to do with yourself and with your faculty, your team. And through that, we talked about gratitude, and it was something that I realized I didn't do enough of. I very much was sort of the glass is half empty, the pessimist for much of my life growing up, and I realized that it wasn't giving me anything, it wasn't helping anything, and it certainly wasn't helping others around me when all you wanted to do was point out the negative. And so that's when I started doing a gratitude journal. So every morning, in addition to other writing, I also ask, I write down sort of what are 3 things I'm grateful for today. And I agree with you, it can be very simple. Sometimes it is a warm spring day on a morning run, as opposed to, 25 degrees on that morning run. So something as simple as that. And one of the first times I realized it impacted me Being a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan, I've endured some losses and misery over the years. And that first year that Sean McDermott took them to the playoffs recently, and the Bills were the last team in the century to go to the playoffs. Many people would have thought the Browns, but no, it was Buffalo. I got a text from someone who said, "Hey, congrats on the Bills going to the playoffs." And my immediate response as I started to text back was, "Yeah, it'll be over in a week." And I deleted that. I didn't actually send it. And instead, I texted, "Can't wait for them to win and then head to Foxborough next week and knock off Brady and the Pats." It didn't happen. The Bills were one and done. But it was clear to me that there was a change in my thought process. And that's something that I have recognized and really tried to instill in my children in the last few years that I hadn't done before, because I know that's probably one of the most important things I can do for them is to have them develop an attitude of gratitude, which I know will carry them through their life.
Yeah, though, and you shared that exact story with me on our first conversation, and I think it's interesting when you catch yourself doing something when you've been working on it for a while. And I think that story, obviously, about the text message that you didn't send is interesting because I think in 5, 10, 15 years from now, you'll be able to look back on that. And to your point about what you do with your kids, I think is really cool. I have a alarm that goes off every day at 2:30 p.m. and it's my gratitude alarm. And over the last 4 or 5 months, whenever I'm with my kids around right at 2:30, they'll make gratitude and they'll say something, that it's going off, and they're a little bit too young right now to fully understand. But my hope is a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, they'll think back and remember like, oh, I remember Dad's gratitude alarm went off. So I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. So got to go back, and I'm going to ask, but is there's anything you're currently reading or perhaps you've read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Sure. Part of, this positivity, right, is around sort of how we approach life and how we approach different challenges in our life. And I had about a year ago read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which certainly has a profound impact on anyone who reads it. When you hear about his struggles that he was in. And currently, I am reading Choice by Dr. Eager, which also is about someone who survived the Holocaust and uh, decisions that we make and how we can get through life and how we can make decisions and recognize that our past does not define us, that we have an opportunity every day to grow and improve and get better. And we have choices that we can make. And I think sharing that with other people is so important. Um, the other book that I shared with you when you and I spoke was Tim Ferriss' Tribe of Mentors, and it's a book I recommend to people because uh, Tim interviews so many people from so many different walks of life, uh, and you just learn about them. And I think probably most importantly, Tim often asks his guests and people interviews in that book what books they recommend or what book they give most often. So you get a lot of ideas for other books to read as well. And then lastly, I am also reading the Hero Code, which was just shared recently with me by you, Chris. I appreciate that. It's been a great book to read and some excellent reminders in there.
I the Tribe of Mentors is, to your point, is a fascinating book, and I love how and why Tim asked those questions of, what are you recommending, what are you reading, but also what have you gifted to others. And when I had the opportunity of spending some time with John Maxwell a couple years ago, that's one of the things that he shared is when he meets somebody or has lunch or breakfast or coffee, and if it's somebody he knows very well, obviously he's not going to say to them, who in your world, that I should know. But regardless of his relationship, one of the questions he always asks is, are you reading anything currently, or have you read anything that really hits you? And he said he's learned about some amazing books that weren't maybe bestsellers or on the top of Amazon list. And to your point about some of the books you shared, Man's Search for Meaning is a book that's many years old. Tribe of Mentors, I believe, is 4 or 5 or 6 years old. And
Yep.
the best of the books that are out there have so much information. So I appreciate you touching on that. Interesting question we've been asking people is, if I had the opportunity to grant you dinner with any 5 people, dead or alive, that you could level up with, who would you choose?
5 people. Um, that's a big number right now in the pandemic. You need
Well,
a large
they'll be
table for
spread. Well, dead or alive, so they might have to be, these fictitious dinners. But either way, they'll be minimum of 6 feet apart.
5 people. Uh, One, I would have to say George Washington, who's the founder of the college that we both attended. And that happens to be the only school which he gave his name to, which I think is important for people to know. But he did so much in terms of, for us as our institution, but also for our nation. Um, I would also include Tim Ferriss in there just because of what he has done and shared. I think he's got a lot that he could share with me. Jim Collins, I'm so fascinated by the books that he's written and the experiences that he's had, and certainly has had an impact on me. I got to get 2 more people on there, huh?
You do.
I would say for my other folks would be my brother, who continues to amaze me with his drive and his passion and pursuit of sharing the game of lacrosse with people. Back where we grew up, he's coaching at our high school, and right now he's moved from the men's game to the women's side, and he's coaching his daughter. An opportunity that he was very excited about to be the head girls lacrosse coach at Shaker High School, and again, just his passion and energy is pretty high and something that I'm uh, grateful for him sharing with me. And for my last person, I would say um, I'm going to go with another president. I'm going to go with Abraham Lincoln. And the reason I'm going to go with him is because he endured so much in his lifetime. When you look at children that he lost, elections that he lost, the time that he was president, and he had to make really hard decisions in very difficult situations. And we can all look back now and talk about, whether it was the right decision or the wrong decision. But in the moment, he was making decisions with what he had, and I think it's pretty impressive what he accomplished.
Yeah, I think to your point is we all look back now and say, woulda, coulda, shoulda, would have done this differently. And I think it goes to that idea of it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback now that you know how the game's turned out and say, well, you should have done this. And they say, well, yeah, obviously I didn't know that was going to happen. So I think that's always an interesting concept of that. We've been dissecting the idea of goals, and I'm curious to get your perspective. Do you actively use and set goals? And if so, where did you really learn about how you use goals in your personal and professional life?
So something that we do here at our school is talk about setting goals every single year, and it's something that we work on in terms of what it means to establish SMART goals and how to identify what they are and how to grow and move forward. I do set weekly goals that I put down each week after I complete a weekly reflection. I also set monthly goals. To be honest, it is an area that I definitely want to improve in because I don't always put enough action steps to them, and I don't always make a very clearly defined set of SMART goals, that are measurable and actionable. Sometimes it seems a little bit more aspirational than goal setting. So it's something that I want to spend more time on moving forward and continue to grow because there are areas I want to improve and areas that I know I can do better. And by being more intentional with that goal setting process, I know I can do that. I have to invest the time in it though.
Yeah, I appreciate you touching on that. As you know, I've been dissecting this myself, and I'm reading a book right now, and the author just talks about how she's had these big goals her entire life, and she's accomplished a few of them, but she also carries around her top three or top five goals in her pocket every day, and it's something that, to your point, just like anything in life, it's like, oh, I can do it, I want to do it, but you actually have to take the time to do that. So I appreciate you touching on that. And is a good reminder that you give us is it's good to get advice and suggestions, but at the end of the day, ultimately comes down to what you take action on. So I appreciate you touching on that. I don't know a bunch of these questions, so I'm curious. We're going to switch over to our hot seat questions, and the only request we have of you is you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Last meal, you can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
My mother's lasagna.
Favorite smell?
Tulips.
Other than lacrosse doesn't count. What is your favorite sport?
College basketball.
Do you have an all-time favorite team?
Buffalo Bills.
All-time favorite movie?
The Outsiders.
What is your favorite book?
Where the Red Fern Grows.
Ooh. What is the favorite app you have on your phone?
Spotify.
What is the background picture on your phone?
My wife and 3 children at a black tie wedding where I tied the bow tie myself. It's easy to
Oh.
tell.
Do you have an all-time favorite quote?
Yes. There are 2 pains in life, discipline and regret by Bill Curry.
Fantastic quote. And what is that one song, no matter whenever you hear it, you always turn it up and rock out to it?
I'm going to go with Pearl Jam, Even Flow.
Okay, that is not. I don't know what the answer I was expecting, but that was definitely not the answer I thought. What does the word, or how do you personally define accountability?
To define accountability, it's interesting because you think about yourself, then you also think about others around you. So I'm going to say meeting the needs of people who depend on you and rely on you.
And I love that. I love that question because there is no right or wrong answer, and some people define it similar ways. But I think the way you described it is, it's exactly who you are, but also who you are as both a husband and a parent, but also, head of an upper school. Wanted to ask if there's maybe 1 or 2 people out there, whether it's social media or not, that are just putting out really positive or educational, uplifting stuff that you'd might like to recommend to our listeners.
I really enjoy Shane Parrish and the work that he does at Farnham Street. I think there's a lot of applicable information. It's not always sort of education based, but the Knowledge Project and the work that he's doing, I really enjoy. And then the other group, I would say, and again, I think for each person, you have to identify sort of where it meets your needs. But Eric Kapitulik does some fantastic work with his organization and company, The Program. He does a lot of work with college teams and professional teams, and I think helps people see what's important and what matters.
I love that. And then what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you or follow you or find out more about you?
So I am on Twitter, and it's at Bullis, BULLISUS, which is the name here, my upper school at Bullis. And then I'm also on LinkedIn as well.
I appreciate that. And last question for you, as we ask everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Well, number one, I just want to thank you, Chris, for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed the conversations that we've been having. The other thing that I would share is that we do have a choice every morning when we wake up with how we want to go about our day. And we can't design it exactly the way we want, but we can design how we respond to what happens to us. And if we are able to do that each night that we put our head down, we can feel good about what we've done and what we've accomplished that day.
I think that's a fantastic way to end today's episode. As you began the episode talking about a choice, your story of being a senior in college. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I know that you and I will connect again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to episode number 340. The very first conversation I ever had with Bobby, we discussed the importance of gratitude in both of our lives. I'm glad he touched upon that today. And if you have never thought about a gratitude journal or notebook, perhaps now is a perfect time. As you wrap up today's episode, I would like to challenge each of you to remember that we always have a choice. That choice might not always be quick or easy, but we always have a choice. And I challenge you to make a choice today and take action for you. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time.
and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.